Hi, I'm Steve Scott, founder of Max International, and I am so honored to be here at Dr. Don Colbert's office today to interview Don and talk about the subject of weight loss. Now, Don is the best-selling author of more than 40 books. He's had a number of New York Times bestsellers, including this one, I Can Do This Diet. Don, thanks for taking time out of your schedule to meet with me today.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure.
So one thing I like about the MetaSwitch program is it's easy not only to incorporate into a person's life, but for me, it's a springboard into healthy choices.
What's so critical we found is that the ingredients in MetaSwitch actually stimulates the AMPK metabolic pathway that switches on the metabolic rate.
Okay, let's talk about that.
First of all, AMPK is the abbreviation of adenosine monophosphate protein kinase, which is a powerful metabolic regulator in the body. It's actually in our skeletal muscle, it's in our fat, it's in our liver, it's actually in our hypothalamus. And this switches on the metabolic rate. In turn, it helps to increase lipolysis, which is the breakdown of fat. Wow. That's what lipolysis is. It also helps to control the blood sugar, and it also helps to regulate appetite, increasing a sensation of fullness and decreasing hunger. So by switching on this metabolic pathway without a stimulant effect, and this is what's critical, because there are other things that stimulate the metabolic rate, like amphetamines.
Right.
But what happens, you get jittery, your heart rate increases, your blood pressure increases, you can't sleep. But this literally increases the metabolic, it regulates the metabolic pathways without creating a stimulant effect.
But the majority of our switch is an ingredient that you talked about, a particular study that you saw relating to the AMPK pathway.
Well, and in fact, there are two key studies. One's a South Korean study, one's an Italian study, and this was actually amazing. It involved over 1,000 people, 1,127 patients.
And they were peer-reviewed and published.
Right, correct. Right. And again, what they found is, especially in people with a BMI or body mass index greater than 30, they found that after just 3 months, they decreased their weight in the men by 10 kilos. You know how much 10 kilos is? It's 22 pounds.
Wow.
That's dramatic. And in women, it decreased their weight by 8 kilos, which is 17.6 pounds. But waist measurement decreased in men 11 centimeters and women 9 centimeters. That's almost 4 to 5 inches.
Wow.
And we're talking about just 3 months.
Right.
And so this was with the active ingredient. So this is a study with over 1,000 people, but the thing is, in their study, the ingredient they used was only half the amount that is in Switch.
Right. The product works, that's all I can say.
It does.
It's not just the product by itself. It's using it as a springboard to make good choices. I've tried to make those choices before and always failed.
So critical in this program is eliminating sugar and eliminating artificial sweeteners, which also raise insulin levels. People don't realize how important it is to eliminate artificial sweeteners. And then to minimize or avoid the starches in the afternoon and evening time. Because when you eat a lot of these starches like wheat convert to sugar rapidly. And so it'll raise the sugar, raise the insulin, program you for weight gain, especially wheat and corn.
And if I'm gonna have wheat, like a good 7-grain toast or rye or whole wheat or whatever.
Correct.
Breakfast is the time to have
Breakfast is the time. You can have that bread for breakfast with a little bit of butter on it, and then you can have some eggs. And I tell people, you have eggs, scramble them, but just use 1 egg yolk, and you can use 3 to 5 egg whites. And so that way you're going to be full for breakfast, and then you've got the right mixture. Along with, you need some fiber. That's why the whole grain bread is so good, because you're getting the fiber, you're getting the carbohydrates, you're getting the good fats, and you can put some almond butter on your toast, which is good fat, or you can cook your eggs in olive oil with the eggs, and just with 1 yolk and 3 to 5 whites will usually fill a person up. So many Americans and also people around the world are either skipping breakfast or they make breakfast their smallest meal. And I tell people they've been fasting for usually at least 8 to 12 hours. And when they skip breakfast or eat a small breakfast, literally their metabolic rate suffers. And so it's so critical to eat a good, healthy breakfast, but we want around, 500, 700 calories for breakfast. If you have just a bagel or a donut and a cup of coffee, that's not enough. You're not stimulating your metabolic rate. And then we need a healthy lunch and a healthy dinner. But the key I found is you want to decrease your starches or eliminate starches, especially after your noon meal. And when you eliminate those starches and eat mainly green carbs with good proteins, with salads, with good healthy fats, with the right fuel mixture and fiber, you literally put the correct fuel mixture in to start burning fat, keep the metabolic rate up, as well as turn down hunger dramatically.
So tell me specifically what you would call a good breakfast.
What they can have, steel-cut oatmeal is a great breakfast, but they also need some protein and some good fat. So what they can do with that is they can have steel-cut oatmeal with some berries, with some pecans or nuts in there. Also, they could have some low-fat yogurt without the added sugar, or some cottage cheese to provide the protein. And then again, they can have green tea, or they can have some coffee, but without the sugar and without the creamer. One of the most amazing studies was an Israeli study that showed that if people ate 700 calories for breakfast, they had two groups. One had 700 calories for breakfast. One had only 200 calories for breakfast. The other group had 700 calories for dinner, and the group that had the 700 calories for breakfast only had 200 calories for dinner. Well, it's interesting, after 3 months, they found the group that had the large breakfast lost on average of 17.8 pounds with 3 inches off the waist. It was 1,400 calories total per day. But the group that had the small breakfast, big dinner, lost only 7.3 pounds with only 1.5 inches off the waist. So over 10 pounds more in the group that ate the big breakfast. That's because when you eat a large breakfast, you literally are stimulating your metabolic rate.
Right.
And what we found is the more muscle mass you have, the higher your metabolic rate is. And so a lot of people burn muscle as fuel, because when you go without eating, your body starts dipping into muscle as fuel. And when you burn muscle as fuel, you're lowering your metabolic rate. It's dangerous to yo-yo diet where you lose a lot of weight, gain more weight. Because what's happening is many times these yo-yo dieters are burning muscle tissue, so that literally as they gain their weight back, they're gaining more fat back, but they're losing more muscle. So literally their percent body fat is going up each time.
Yeah. Now tell me about fiber, because one thing in our user group study, the one thing that we heard in interview after interview was that the fiber seemed to kill their cravings.
Well, fiber is so important, and realize Americans are woefully deficient in fiber. The average American gets on like 10 to 15 grams of fiber a day, but the recommended amount of fiber we need, according to the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, is 25 grams for a woman and 38 grams for a man.
Wow.
So we're woefully deficient. Now, fiber is extremely important. And first of all, there's two kinds of fiber. There's soluble fiber, you say, and most of the products out there are soluble fiber. The insoluble fiber is equally as important. It helps to move the toxins out. It literally sweeps the colon clean. And so the insoluble fiber is unable to be broken down. It's in the skins of many plants, or like the skins of apples and pears. It's in wheat bran and oat bran and rice bran. And so again, the soluble fiber component keeps the GI tract involved. It also creates the feeling of fullness. Both fibers create a feeling of fullness, both the soluble fiber and the insoluble. So what you're getting the best of both worlds, and that's why I love the Curb. The Curb contains 6 grams of soluble fiber, 6 grams of insoluble fiber. So you're creating that feeling of fullness. It works on a volumetric principle, because when you eat soluble and insoluble fiber, it expands in the GI tract. But the key is you've got to take the fiber, the soluble and insoluble, with the water.
Yes.
And I love for my patients to do this, especially as a snack, mid-afternoon and or in the evening. Maybe a half a bar. We don't start them with a full bar, or else they can get some gas issues. So we find a half a bar with about 12 to 16 ounces of water works beautifully, creating that volumetric principle of fullness or satisfaction, so they're not craving a lot of these sugary processed foods that are high in sugar, high in starches, that's going to literally program them for weight gain.
On our instructions, we say 20 ounces of water for a fiber bar, which would be 10 for a half, but that's really a minimum.
Minimum,
because
absolutely.
I'm telling you, I do a half and I'll do 16 ounces of water with it.
Good.
I've loved it, and I've loved what it's done for my digestive processes and so on. I will not ever stop that fiber bar because number one, I love not being super hungry, not being driven by my hunger, and it's that volumetric thing about fiber you talk about. And number two, I just love the way it works.
Most people have to deal with hunger in the late afternoon and evening. What I found is people are not first of all, they're not craving broccoli or asparagus or salads.
Right.
They're craving 5 key foods. Actually, University of Illinois did a study and they found what are the 5 most common comfort foods, and they found number 1 was chips. Yep. Potato chips, corn chips, number 1. Number 2 was ice cream. Number 3 were cookies. Number 4 is women's favorite, which is usually chocolate. And number 5 is pizza and pasta.
Wow.
Now these cravings usually attack when the blood sugar gets low. And so it usually that's why people need to pick me up usually mid-afternoon around 3, and then we find in the evening around 8 or 9. And so when those and this is a difference, it's both hunger and appetite, and the two are different. See, hunger is a physiologic need for food based on low blood sugar. Right. Whenever your blood sugar dips low, bingo, you get a signal from your hypothalamus, your appetite center, your brain, to eat. And eat something that's going to raise the sugar as fast as you can. So you're going to reach for a candy bar or a cookie or chips or something to raise that sugar. Now, what we find is if we can, in turn, keep that blood sugar stabilized by fiber and by the right fuel mixture, guess what? We turn off hunger.
One thing that was pointed out to me a while back, there was a new study that came out, I think I saw it on one of the news programs, that most American adults consume 25% of their calorie intake for the day after 8 o'clock in the evening.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and those 25% of calories, guess what they are?
They're all the foods I just mentioned.
Yeah,
probably.
they're all the things you're not supposed to eat. And I started watching how my family eats. We'll typically have a dinner around 6 o'clock, and I started watching, and sure enough, 8 o'clock would roll around.
The comfort foods.
Oh, here they come.
Right.
You know, that's when the ice cream comes out. That's when the chips come out.
Now, Steve, that's why what I put in my book is the Can-Do diet. We put in Can-Do confessions. One of the first things I tell people they have to do, they've got to go through their fridge, their cupboards, their pantries. They got to remove the irresistible foods. Because one thing people don't understand, food manufacturers, processed food companies are very smart. They hire the brightest food chemists, the brightest marketers, the brightest psychologists to develop a food that so appeals to the 5 senses that it's impossible to eat just one.
Yeah.
And then what they do, they want to get a customer for life that's addicted to that not just one chip. They want you to eat a big, supersized bag of chips every night.
Yeah.
And so what we found is if we can clean the cupboards out of the processed food, the chips, the cookies, the candy, the freezer, get rid of the ice cream, just give it away. Get rid of those irresistible foods. And then in place, put healthy snacks in there. You know, put some raw nuts in there. Put some avocados, some guacamole, some almond butter, some cucumbers, some organic celery sticks, some carrot sticks, something that we can feed on, and then plus the curb bar.
Yeah, that's what happened to me. Is I started doing half a curb at night, usually within an hour after dinner with water,
Right.
And I was good till bedtime.
And I tell people a really good caveat I've found: go to bed early. I've found if I can get my patients in bed 9:30 or 10, we can literally avoid when those appetite triggers go off.
Yeah.
Because the later you stay up, the more you're going to encounter these appetite triggers. When a person has less sleep, generally their body is more stressed and is producing higher amounts of cortisol. Now, cortisol is important for health, but too much cortisol is a double-edged sword. It causes you to gain fat, especially in your abdomen, and to lose muscle. So the higher your cortisol level is, it's catabolic, which means it breaks down muscle tissue, but it causes an increased appetite and it causes fat deposition, especially in the truncal area.
Are there any foods that raise cortisol levels?
Sugar stresses the body. as well as deep fried foods, as well as hydrogenated fats, as well as excessive amounts of processed foods. But one thing that really stresses the body is when you have low blood sugar. In other words, if you skip meals or if you go for hours without eating, this probably stresses the body more than anything as far as food goes, more so than actually eating the wrong food. So if you go, say, 5-6 hours without eating, your blood sugar is going to literally drop. When your blood sugar drops, your body responds by producing adrenaline and cortisol.
Wow.
And so by having frequent times when your blood sugar drops and all of a sudden you start craving and your hunger goes crazy, not your appetite, your hunger.
Right.
You are secreting cortisol. You're squirting cortisol out, and cortisol and insulin, now listen very closely, these are the dynamic duo for weight gain. In other words, when you are craving the very foods that raise your sugar the fastest, like sugar and processed foods and chips and Coke and sodas and cookies and candy and chocolate and ice cream, well, when you do that, you're getting a spike of sugar, a spike of insulin. It's telling your body to store fat, but then you have cortisol. And cortisol is that powerful hormone that tells your body to not just store fat, but store belly fat, which is the most toxic of all fats.
The neat thing about a program that works is it motivates you to stay with it.
That is a very good point, because some people may not, most people are watching the scale. So I encourage my patients to take a photograph before and then during the program, because you told me an example of a person who literally was watching the scale and they'd lost only like 4 pounds.
4 or 5 pounds, yeah.
But then you encourage them to take a picture, and the picture, literally they saw the difference immediately when they took the picture.
Yes, they were ready to quit until they saw the side-by-side pictures, because when you're losing fat, you see yourself every day. Well, you don't lose it all in a day. So you don't think you're changing, but those side-by-side pictures really revealed the changes. And I noticed also there was a recent study that came out that showed that it's healthy to be a grazer throughout the day, so long as it's healthy food.
And the reason is very simple. Because if you're grazing throughout the day, you're not getting that blood sugar drop. When you get that blood sugar drop, all of a sudden, you have just released adrenaline and cortisol that's going to literally cause increased cravings for the very foods, high sugar foods, high starch foods, that's going to raise your sugar, raise your insulin, and program you for fat storage.
Yeah.
But another very important caveat, I'd say, that's so simple but so profound, is activity. I don't even like to use the word exercise, because so many of my patients, whenever I say the word exercise, immediately they, fold their arms or, turn me off. So I say just increase your activity level. And one of the simplest things anyone can do, pretty much anyone, is when they wake up in the morning, I tell them drink that 16 ounces of water, and then they can take their switch, their 2 switch with that, and then go out and just walk briskly for about 10 minutes. The reason I don't say 30 minutes, just 10 minutes, because what happens during the night, you are literally burning up all your sugar stores of glycogen, which is stored sugar, that's stored in your muscles and liver. Now, when you burn up your glycogen stores, guess what you tap into as your fuel?
Fat.
Pure fat.
Wow.
So in other words, when you wake up in the morning, get that big glass of water, 16 ounces, take a couple of switch, go out and walk for just 10 minutes. Now, if you can walk longer, that's fine. You can walk 15 to 30 minutes, but start with just 10 minutes, and then you'll be literally dipping into the fat stores, especially the belly fat.
That explains so much, because once I started doing that, I mean, it went crazy.
Timing with weight loss is everything. It's everything. And just think of it, when you get up in the morning, you have your water, take some switch, go walk 10 minutes, come back after 30 minutes, have your breakfast, the right fuel mixture, and literally you are putting yourself in a fat-burning type of metabolic state, and then graze throughout the day, but graze on the right foods.
Yes.
And as you do, you're keeping that blood sugar stabilized, you're preventing hunger, you're turning off the appetite, and then in the afternoon you continue grazing, but you shift to the green carbohydrates instead of the starches, and again, no sugars. Take your curb in the afternoon and evening, just a half, with lots of water. And I tell people, please drink water.
Yes.
Our body is about 2/3 water. And so many of my patients are dehydrated.
Yep.
And so by taking adequate water, it also helps with appetite, but it works on that volumetric principle with the fiber. And again, it keeps that blood sugar stabilized. It turns off hunger. It turns off appetite. And it gives you energy.
And I never heard that before.
Sure. Oh, and we see that a lot. That's why we have to not only choose the right foods, but also the correct beverages. Unfortunately, most people are choosing the wrong beverages that literally set them up for weight gain by choosing the sodas, the juices. People say, oh, it's orange juice, or it's apple juice, or it's grape juice, chock full of sugar. And then they sweeten coffees from, you know, Starbucks, even though they taste really good. They're full of sugar, they're full of cream and whipped cream and things like that, and dairy products that literally invite the weight gain into your body.
Now, what do you say to the people that say, oh, but I only drink diet sodas?
Well,
Big ones, but only drink diet sodas.
What they don't realize, studies have found that diet sodas contain usually either NutraSweet or aspartame or Splenda. And these are super sweeteners that, yes, they don't have calories in them, but studies have shown they raise insulin levels and they raise your appetite. They increase your appetite for more sugar and more starch.
More carbs.
More carbs. What we find, these artificial sweeteners raise insulin levels. And so insulin, remember, is the greatest hormonal promoter for weight gain, because when you raise insulin levels, you are unknowingly telling your body to actually store fat and not to burn fat when you exercise. That's what you do when you raise insulin levels. So it's critically important to lower sugar, lower insulin levels by the right combination of foods, and then avoid sugars and artificial sweeteners.
What other uniquenesses have you seen in the MetaSwitch program, the fiber bar?
One thing we've not talked about in the MetaSwitch is the ribosine molecule that's in there. See, ribosine is a combination of D-Ribose with cysteine that is a unique molecule. There's no other molecule like this. And when a person is losing weight, they start to release from their fat cells all kind of toxins. I mean, solvents, pesticides. See, the body is unique in that when the liver can't effectively detox certain chemicals, toxins, pesticides, the body simply puts it in the fatty tissues.
Wow.
So most people don't realize that. So when people start dieting, their body starts releasing all kind of toxins, solvents, pesticides, herbicides, all kind of toxins. And so people start getting brain fog, fatigue, they feel dopey, they feel terrible, and they don't realize what's going on. So the important part of the switch is it contains the ribosine molecule that literally has the sulfur portions of the molecule that literally acts like flypaper, trapping these toxins, heavy metals, solvents, pesticides, herbicides, and escorting them out of the body. So as they're losing weight, they are detoxifying, which is different from any other product I've seen.
I'm so grateful for not only this interview, but the fact that you are on our medical board, the fact that you have made yourself available to us in so many ways and helped change so many lives. And I'm just eternally grateful to you.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure. And again, we want to get the information out.
Amen. Thank you.